Welcome to episode 464 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton. He's Levon, a.k.a. Barcelev, and I got to start this listener question show with one big question. Are you ready, Levon?
Yeah, man, bring it on. What's up, everybody?
Yeah, so fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure what you want to call it, since Tuesday's match and the podcast that we recorded with Rafa on Thursday night, there hasn't really been any big news, breaking news. And I think in Barcelona world, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes no news is a good thing for at least a few days. Again, with the next match coming on Sunday against Espanyol for what should be Barcelona winning the Liga title, which we'll talk about later. But first, we kind of have to retread a little bit about what we already talked about on Thursday, and that is Messi and Alemany right at the start. And last time I did Alemany to Messi and ended the show with Messi. This time we're going to start with Messi and go from there because that is obviously where the most questions we had in totality were. So starting the Messi, yep.
No, I said I.
All right, let's do it. So starting the Messi questions from Minor. Some say yes, others say no. If no obstacles were in the way, Levon, do you want Messi back, and in what role do you see him back at FC Barcelona?
What does it mean if no obstacles are in the way?
As if La Liga just says no straight up, and it's not up to Barcelona at all, and Saudi Arabia just comes in because Barcelona isn't under the limit. That's what I would assume the obstacles mean.
Emotionally, yes, I want Messi back. For the project, I also think it is fine as long as people don't get their hopes up and think that we'll go far in Europe or anything. Financially, this is the big unknown, right? Because we don't know what sacrifices we would make to get Messi back, nor do we really know what benefits there are financially that compensate for making those sacrifices. So, for example, personally, I would not want to sell Ansu to get Messi back because even though Ansu had a terrible year, there is still a chance that Ansu becomes a generational player for us and bangs in goals for the next 6, 7, 8 seasons.
Yeah, can I add that answer real quick because we didn't have a question about him? That I want to be pretty. We'll say on the line about this. That it seems like any person that I speak to with any bit of sense offline about Ansu Fati says the exact same things. That if a 70 million euro bid comes in, everybody's understandable, but nobody wants Ansu gone. However, it seems like sport and at least Twitter.com and its current iterations, you'll see a lot more of sell Ansu. He's washed up. He's done. But I just want to reiterate that I keep hearing anybody with any sense says the same thing, that he's 20 years old. There's still a year or two of failure to give up on a talent like that, who has had just, again, a natural ability to strike the ball and put the ball in the back of the net. Like those things are not taught. He still has that. We just have to find that player again. And I don't think anyone with any sense wants to give up on Ansu. But there is a number, as we've said before, there is a number where you say no. And I think this, to go back to the Messi thing, just to ask my own question for you, because you've kind of answered all of Chad and Dinesh's question as well about Messi. But to add to that, Messi, what are the numbers for Messi for you? Like 10 to 13 million a year is what we've heard would be his wages. And obviously it would be, it would have to be a free transfer because he's a free agent. So you don't have to worry about anything about that. But is there a certain number in wages per week or overall wages for the year where you say, no, that compromises the financial plan and in theory financially stagnates the club from using even Messi to transition into a new era? Because still, whether or not Messi's here, Barca's still heading into a new era with new stars in a year or two beyond Messi.
You're asking me that question as if I would know. Nobody knows. How can I know what number or what wages will make it so that everything is stable?
Would you be comfortable if he's on Lewandowski's wages? Like I know, again, I guess it doesn't matter because you're right. The revenue and what the new wage limit is set at is one thing, but yeah, where? I guess a better question would be, where should he fit in the salary structure? Like, where would be a comfortable spot for him? Like, for example, for Busquets, if Busquets renews, Busquets should be in the bottom third of the wages simply because of his age and what that contract would be, right? And so I guess the question for Messi would be, should he be a top 3 earner? Should he be a top 5 earner? Or where should he be in the wage structure?
Yeah, that's such a complicated question. I think the more pertinent question is, who do we sell, or which players do we give up to make it possible for Messi to return? And from there, as long as we don't give up Araujo, as long as we don't give up Gavi,
Yeah,
as long as we don't give up even Alejandro Balde, or Ansu, um, and those are just the players who are talked about, because we don't want Frankie or Pedri to go either. As long as they don't give up like the core of our future, then you can make the argument if he comes on a 2-year contract, who cares what his wages are? Because those wages will come off the book again after 2 years. And during the 2 years that he is here, the economical benefits to the club will be huge. But again, you're asking me, but I do not know. I do not know.
yeah,
So I cannot say, hey, he should be here in the wage structure, because a lot of people always talk about, yeah, when Messi comes back, the club will make 250 million euros extra. Well, really? How? We don't know.
yeah. Right. Yeah, I've heard it Montjuic. I think they're going to just make sure the ticket prices are 9 times what they normally are. I think that would be the way to get that done.
I know I'm not extending my I'm freezing my season ticket next season, unfortunately, because they're raising the prices,
Which makes
and
sense.
also because I'm traveling, so I would
Mm.
miss the first couple of months of the season, and some other things that are going on. So I'm actually not going next season.
Yeah, I mean, which again makes sense. What is it, 35,000 or 38 in total at Montjuic?
Yeah, I heard 49,000, but
49. Okay.
10,000 don't have full visibility.
Yep.
Apparently, there are
Okay.
even seats with 20% visibility, like
Okay.
something crazy like that. So.
Yes, that's right. I saw
uh,
38,000. Okay, next one from Romy. How long would you guess it would be until Barca became financially stable? By that I mean able to register their players without issue and having a relatively normal amount to spend on improving the squad every season, not crazy Bartomeu or EPL spending, more like or par or slightly below Madrid. Basically, how long until I don't have to be worried every transfer window, 2015, 2016 later? My guess would be, best estimate would be the 25-26 season would be the answer because as we just said, we just talked about this, 24-25 should be the return to the renovated Camp Nou. So I think by 25-26, I think the book should all be balanced. And I'd say Barca by that time would also have like 80 mil or so to spend minimum in terms of bringing revenue. However, again, when we say we don't know, La Liga and their ability to bring in capital, right, as a total league, and how even broadcast rights and things change because there is such a trickle down effect in global media where the EPL deal. I mean, in theory, you would have thought that what is the phrase that the rising tide rises all boats, or you get the idea. So the idea would be that would raise all of those kind of contracts, but no, like it's now based on the streaming service, or if there are pivots to the ways in which your product is distributed. So even the next 2 years, I mean, look at the way that La Liga, if they were smart, should have some kind of referendum on the financial benefits, and by that I mean the lack thereof of the CVC deal, which is not done well. In the same way that the Bundesliga right now is hardlining that same offer of 50 million euros per club that's being offered to them through their own CVC deal. And the Bundesliga and the fans are obviously rejecting that, but they're looking at themselves and they're trailing financially. They're trailing La Liga and they're trailing Serie A as well. So, I mean, I think the path forward for the Bundesliga and La Liga and Serie A is continuing to get creative and to continue to have referendums on how they build their wage limits and build their financial plans for their clubs, and what they allow, what they don't allow, and the kind of again revenue that they themselves are bringing in as a league in totality. I think those factors are just as important as the renovated Camp Nou to me in the next year or two or three, because Barca could quote unquote do everything right financially, individually, to meet all the demands of La Liga, and then all of a sudden they realize that La Liga is the one who, I mean, it just isn't bringing in any revenue as a total product, and that would, I mean, that would, in theory, put Barcelona behind the eight ball to not say register. I mean, those two different things, right? Because they would be able to register at that point with the Liga, but they wouldn't necessarily be having a ton of money to spend because they wouldn't be able to splash all this cash. Because again, in theory, at that point, no Spanish club would do so. I hope you can take my splattering of words and turn it into 3 or 4 sentences, Levon. That would be appreciated.
I mean, La Liga's income is only a part of our income, right? And not the biggest part. There's also TV rights from European competitions.
Yeah.
There's match revenue. There's the sponsors, merchandising revenue, and whatnot. So um, what what we need is for the club to be well run. No, nobody ever talks about Bayern Munich not spending insane amounts on salaries, but nobody ever talks about how Bayern Munich is not an elite club either. Why? Because yeah, they're a wealthy club, but nowhere near Paris Saint-Germain or Premier League, or even Barcelona of 5 or 10 years ago. But they're just incredibly well run. So that should be our aim. Now, when we will be financially stable, God, I'm so afraid because the stadium is going to cost so much money, and this club will be in debt for the next 50, 60 years. And there are so many variables that can seriously mess up our club. Um, so, I mean, what happens if 5 years from now there's another pandemic and we go without 2 years of stadium revenue? Um, is Goldman Sachs going to own our club at that point? Who knows, right? So, as far as when we can sign players normally, here also, I don't know. Hopefully, 2, 3 summers from now, but we'll see.
Yep. We'll have to see. Speaking of well run, good transition to the next question. So we got two Alemany questions. David, are we going to get some sort of fee for? Well, a third question would be: is Dan ever going to learn how to say his name? Well, fortunately, with him going to Aston Villa, I don't say his name anymore correctly. So we'll just chalk that up to a 3-year L for me. But anyway, David says, are we going to get some sort of fee for Alemany before leaving it with his contract up? Shouldn't Aston Villa have to pay him out of his contract? Easy answer to that one. To my understanding, Levon, it was basically a gentleman's agreement that if he had a deal that was bigger that would take him somewhere else, then he was allowed to negotiate that deal without much of a buyout. That was my understanding to that.
It's my understanding that his contract ends on June 30th anyway. So
Okay.
yeah, and the Y is like the Y of young, Alemany, or it's even like the ñ in Espanol, Alemany.
Yeah. Well,
So
I'll have people know that
I'm, I'm, I'm saying
Levon
this
and I have been
mostly for the
practicing this.
listeners. You're a lost cause already. So
Okay, that's true. That's true. We have practiced this off air, not today, like in years past. And anyway, Buddy is going to finally put me out of my misery with this one. Two-part question. From a value standpoint, how big is his loss in your opinion? How founded are the other allegations about the real reasons, like what's being circulated, that Laporta is getting influenced by the players' agents, like Mendez? When is he planning the club's transfers, and how is that timeline going to work? I answered this a bit on Thursday's show, but yeah, Levon.
so after the match, I went and I had a beer with Adam Adam Rivera, one of our listeners, um, and Alex Truca and Tom Sanderson, I think his name is. Um, and we were talking about this also. I think what bothers me most is that he leaves like in the middle of the summer. Um, as far as how important he is, I think he's an incredibly good negotiator, and the value of that cannot be underestimated. Um, I'll give you an example. Bartomeu was a ridiculously bad negotiator and just gave out insane contracts to everybody.
He was a soggy noodle. He
Yeah,
was.
and Alemany is pretty much the opposite. So he's a really good negotiator. We're going to lose that. He has um, an incredibly solid understanding of the financial mess of our club, of La Liga fair play. He has excellent relationships in La Liga that that we will lose. Um, what is more important than ever is that Jordi Cruyff stays. because they have worked closely together. So everything that we are now losing with Alemany, if we also lose Jordi Cruyff, it makes
Yeah.
that much worse, right? You don't want to put Deco there now, because what is Deco going to understand of all of this fair play mess? Nobody understands it. Even good German journalists who have investigated the La Liga fair play rules are still not really able to explain this stuff well to us.
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate what I said last week, that I mean, imagine you're in these rooms having these negotiations, including Dembele's contract extension and things like that. All these contract extensions, the Gavi one, the Araujo, now those are already agreed upon. But take the ones that are not yet agreed upon, again, like Dembele's, and you're basically starting from scratch if you lose both Alemany and Cruyff. And the same thing with the Liga, where even if it's confusing and they're jumping through hoops, it's very difficult to begin those processes early. And what the trickle down effect of that is that even if Deco kind of catches himself up, right, has the meetings he has to, and gets to where he needs to be without any help, right, that means that he never got to the finish line as to where or all of the things that Cruyff and Alemany could have done with that same amount of time. Because now you're talking about, unless he has already the ducks in a row with his agency and had things perfectly aligned to sell, because again, Rafinha is a former client, to sell Rafinha to Newcastle at 80 million. And actually, I want to throw this out here too. This Rafinha for 80 mil to Newcastle thing, I think perfectly aligns with the idea of Deco arriving, just because that's his final deal, right? Like, let's say on the it's all prepared, it's all signed for the first day of the transfer window, and on huge wages, there goes Rafinha with a huge agent bonus, and then stepping out of his agency and distancing himself from his agency is Deco, right? So Deco makes a huge commission on Rafinha getting sold to Newcastle, and that 80 million in profit is equal to the amount that Barcelona has to get to after the other 120 million came off the books to get them in theory back to the 1v1 fair play. So there's so much that makes sense with that, and I'm just just to throw that conspiracy out there. It's a light one, an easy one, but it seems like if Deco is becoming the sporting director and Rafinha is going to 80 million for 80 million to Newcastle, it seems to solve literally everybody's problems, and allows Rafinha to be a starter. With the exception of, yes,
But
it does not solve the problem for Barcelona that they lose that depth on the wing.
but where does this 120 million come from? And you're not the first person to to talk about that number.
Yeah.
But I've
Well, okay.
never
So
I've never seen it like fully explained or confirmed.
yeah. So I will say did a little of the math on last week's Thursday show. I don't want to rehash it for everyone who was listening to that, but as I said, it's not in theory 80 million. I mean 120 million, because as we said, it is, if it's PK and it's Busquets, his salary, as well as the Griezmann sale, as well as what was it? The other not Coutinho, but whoever it was. Anyway, it was all those salaries and numbers coming out the books. But as I said, Araujo, Gavi, Balde, all the extensions that are being signed, and Busquets would have to be re-added to that number. So it's not actually 120. It would be, Barcelona again would start at a negative 30 or whatever it is, because they have to do those renewals. So that's how I explained it last week, and that's how I'll explain it again. But again, the 120 is coming again from the salaries that were owed to PK, and again, Busquets' deal is coming off the books.
That,
So
that
that was the number that.
that's assuming that PK and Busquets, not PK and Busquets, PK and Griezmann coming off the books have not already been taken into account the last transfer window.
I don't think I don't
They
think
can
it
only come
did.
off the books once.
Right. I don't think they came off in January, because then Barcelona likely would have been able to spend in January. That was the whole problem, that PK's was a full year deal, and by
No,
ending his contract the way he did, it
no,
wouldn't come off until May.
no. The problem in January, from what I understand, was that we missed out on the Champions League money, so that messed up the whole percentage and balance of income versus cost. But I've heard both things. Like I hear people
Yeah.
say that Griezmann and Piqué are still need to come off the books, and I've also heard people say the opposite.
Yeah.
That no, that
I mean,
has already
mathematically,
happened,
it makes sense that they haven't.
and that
That's what
does
I'm
not
saying.
help us.
Mathematically, it makes sense if they haven't. But yeah, who knows? All right, let's keep moving on. Chad says, should the club be focused on bringing in an out and out striker so that he can grow and learn under the mentorship of Lewandowski, And I think Chad is more in particular talking about all those rumors for Vitor Roca are real. I mean, obviously he wants to come to the club. The club wants him, but 40 million is a bit too pricey for what they're going to be able to spend. But this could be certainly one of those examples where the club basically promises to pay that number, and or they pay part of it in installments, and they eventually bring him a year down the road. So it's not really learn under Lewandowski. More it is that you try to set up your successor a year out.
I mean, if we were financially healthy, then yeah, awesome. If you're not, uh, you know,
Yeah, well, yes, he said should you focus on, and I can't imagine the club should prioritize a backup striker role for next season. I just like there's 3 or 4 other positions that need to be reinforced before that.
yeah. I mean, we probably need a midfielder first, defensive midfielder, especially if Busquets leaves.
Yep.
A good argument is going to be, could be made that if Koundé is going to start at right back next season, that by Halloween Koundé will have taken an axe to Xavi's neck. So we quite possibly need a right back just to keep our coach safe. Vitor Roque, I've just seen YouTube compilations like anybody else. So he kind of reminds me of Luis Suarez. I'm not the first person to say this, but you don't know how that's going to play out. So that
No,
could be
I
that could be a 40 million steal, or it could be a complete waste of money.
yeah, I've watched him in 3 full matches now, and I agree with that assessment that he has an ability to. I mean, he's really, really good on the ball. Has the ability to kind of drop in, link in different positions. He is physically strong, very wide for his age, even really good sense to how to create space. Yes, but for anyone expecting that he's going to have this goal scoring touch, that's going to take time. And I don't even know if that's the player that Barcelona are getting right away. Like they are getting a player who, as a center forward, creates space and can improve. I mean, I think he's the kind of player that would improve the goal scoring numbers for the likes of a Ferran Torres or an Ansu Fati. He links really, really well through the middle, and he's a much different profile than Lewandowski. As you said, he is much more Luis Suarez than Lewandowski. But again, remember, Luis Suarez is like somewhere behind my head here because Luis Suarez is also the third leading goal scorer in Barcelona history. So we always have to temper our expectations to goal scoring numbers for 20-year-old Brazilian players. Like it doesn't happen. So he's going to need at least 2 or 3 years to even find his scoring boots. Like the fact that Twitter is celebrating every goal he scores means that he's not scoring that many goals because if there's a party every time he scores 1 goal, like it's not like he's in the Brazilian league absolutely lighting it up, but he's a really good foundational player with a lot of things to grow. And I think he would be a really good fit in Xavi's pressing system. I also think he has very high potential in Xavi's, again, the system to press with what he asks the center forward to do in link up play and press. So that would be my what I've seen from, again, watching 3 full matches of Vitor Roca.
And he already got called up for the Brazilian national team, right? Or is that the youth team?
He started in the U20 World Cup.
Okay, he didn't get a senior call up.
No, the CONMEBOL. Sorry, he started in the U20 CONMEBOL where he had like 6 goals to lead the team, and he was fantastic in that tournament. Yeah, so okay. I think he's on the peripheral of the Brazilian full team, or maybe he got an extended roster spot somewhere in like a training camp. That's possible too. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we sign him, rock on, and hopefully everything will turn out well. There's this other kid, like the 15-year-old. What's his name? Kendrick.
Endrick, the 16-year-old who's already going to Real Madrid for.
I'm thinking of the rapper. No, it's Endrick.
Yes, Endrick is going to Real Madrid for 700 million euros or something like that.
Wait, what?
No, he's was it 6? I think it was 60. He already signed for Madrid for 70 mil. For 60.
Yeah, I thought it was like 50 or 60 or something, and apparently he stopped scoring ever since he signed.
Because he's 16 years old, or he just turned 16. He was 15. He was 16. Like, what do you want to happen? Yeah. Yep. Okay, so Abbas asked, speaking of teenagers, by the way, I have a question. From the time you've been following Gavi, has he ever convinced you he can be more of an interior midfielder, a ball carrier, dribbler, playmaker, or goal scorer, more than mostly defensive? and a playbreaker. And I'll start here with the boring stuff and then let you take it from here. So I would say if you see Gabi as an attacking midfielder, not as an attacking midfielder, more as this versatile, good at a lot of things, the worker that you know he is, then you understand what he already is and where he may be able to improve upon as well. So what he does is statistically he wins a lot of second balls, which again it's hard to track those numbers, and it's a weird stat that doesn't numerically play out well. But he wins so many second balls, and again that means possession for you, and not just wasted possession, but that means getting possession back in advantageous positions. And then as an inside forward, he's in the top 25 percentile of tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances, aerial duels won, plus most passing metrics. And for more defensive-minded midfielders, not defensive midfielders, but defensive-minded midfielders, he finds himself completing passes into the opposition's box and getting more touches in the opponent's box than 89% of other midfielders. So if you think of him more as a Marcos Llorente type as an inside forward, or you think of him like Anguisse, Zambo Anguisse at Napoli and what he's done for Napoli this season, it makes more sense to what he contributes, because Barcelona is able to be one of, a top 8 pressing side in all of Europe because of a player like Gavi. Like Gavi does that at an elite level already. And as he continues to refine parts of his game, because again, he is a young player. So as he continues to, he's already putting himself in the right positions, but as he continues to get the final ball and things like that, then, and also open up his goal scoring, like think about Pedri last year to this year. What's the difference? He scored a bunch more goals. Well, I mean, while he was healthy, but Pedri's like added that touch, a little bit of goal scoring to his touch, and those things can improve for young players. So, I mean, as far as what Xavi is and what I convinced that he can be, I think he already has, again, the foundation to be an elite player in Xavi's system. I wouldn't want to throw him into some other system, but he's elite in Xavi's system. That's why he's up as a teenager. And, I think, again, there's certainly room to improve, but I just want to make sure we're categorizing him the right way.
Yeah, nothing to add.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you hit the nail on his head. Exactly.
Well, I'll give you the one about Balde then. Xavier asks, what makes Alba's final ball delivery so good, and how does Balde improve? What does it take to master the cross or something like that? Can't just be accuracy.
Talent. You're talking about Jordi Alba. He's one of the best attacking fullbacks
21st century.
in the 21st century. Yeah, definitely. What makes Alba so incredibly good is however, is not just his passing. It's just the timing of his runs, and it looks so incredibly easy. And it's insane, because Balde has better stamina and Balde is faster. And exactly like Jordi Alba, they have 2 eyes in the front of their head, and they have a neck, and they can turn around their neck, see what is happening around them. However, Alba uses his eyes and his neck to know exactly when he needs to start running, so that the midfielders or attackers can play him a through ball from where he can then assist. And he'll come on and he'll do it like 3-4 times a game. It's just amazing, and we've been taking it for granted all this time.
Because I think he was on the end of it. Because I imagine all those years that Alba was delivering those balls to Luis Suarez and to Messi, and it was the same pass to Messi over and over and over again. And yeah, I mean, Messi is praised for
and not
scoring those
just
goals, but yeah.
And not just that, it was usually Messi passing him the ball. So everybody was always
Mm-hmm.
giving all of the credit to Messi. They were ignoring that Alba did the same for Spain.
Mm-hmm.
It's the run that dictates the pass. And I think it was the last game where against Osasuna, when Alba came on for the last 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, run after run after run, which was just perfectly timed. And that's just the beauty of football.
Yeah.
That people don't pick up on, that people don't give credit to, where credit is due. And the first thing that the first thing that Balde can improve if he can ever improve it, it's not his passing technique, but it's just knowing when to do what.
Yep. And again, I think that comes with reps. I mean, I think the player that Jordi Alba was at Valencia to the player that he became at Barcelona is different. He did raise his level. He did get better. He did improve. Again, in playing in high profile games, playing for Spain, playing in games that matter with players that matter that make you better. All of those things are very helpful. So as his team and Balde, to reiterate something I've said for years now, I was always worried about Balde, but I also questioned whether or not once his teammates got better, that he would get better. And that's exactly what happened with Balde. The second he moved to the first team, and now he's surrounded by those top level talents. And that's why, like every time with the Copa del Rey, when it's like you just want full Barca Athletic or U19 kids, it can't work that way. I always want to see what happens when you take the 2 or 3 top most promising Barca Athletic or U19s and you put them alongside Frankie and Pedri and Lewandowski and Araujo, right? And then you put Chadi next to Araujo. So can those top level elite players improve everybody else? Because again, if you put that same Chadi Riyad next to Eric Garcia, you might not be able to see what Chadi Riyad might be capable of in the first team the way that putting him next to Araujo might do. So that's always my thing with young players. And again, Balde's going to improve his reps. All right, last question here.
Wait,
Yeah.
There's another thing about Balde that people don't give him credit for, and that this kid, he competes, and he competes hard.
Well, that's why he starts.
Yeah, that's why he starts, and that's something that Jordi Alba misses, right? The famous games that he played at Anfield, where Jordi Alba is crying in the dressing room. No, but Balde, he comes in and he competes and he fights for every ball, and he runs his off to recover on defense. Even on training, I remember at the beginning of the season, Dembele said that Balde es un pesado. How would I translate that? Like when you train against somebody, and that person just trains so hard that it's annoying.
Yep.
Because he won't let you do anything. That's how hard he's playing against you in practice. So Balde competes hard, and that is something that Barcelona have been missing, and that's one of the main things that he has brought to this team.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why to me, not always the untouchable, but as I've spent years complaining about the young fullback market, the fact that Barcelona has one of them is just an incredible stroke of luck to a point. Okay,
exactly.
last question here from Tarab, and then the rest of the question that I did not get to answer, I will likely push off and answer those later in the week. Because again, we will need stuff to talk about before Espanyol on Sunday. So Tarab asked, leaving results and finances aside, how tactically astute do you consider Xavi as a manager? Like purely based on tactics, would he be in the top 10 managers in the world?
Wow. It's so hard to say because when a manager comes to a club like Barcelona, everything is magnified, and this club is so self-destructive, where when things go against us, it's everybody's fault. And there's one thing being tactically astute, but then the players need to be tactically astute also, in order to implement all of those ideas fully, right? I have no question that Xavi's football IQ is off the charts. Does that mean that every decision he makes is the right one? No. But Guardiola. Would you say Guardiola is tactically astute?
Yeah.
Guardiola has made some pretty inexplicable decisions in his coaching career in high-profile games, right?
Champions League Guardiola Galaxy branding it is become more than a meme. It exists. Like he might do it against Real Madrid. Like we know that he potentially might make a mistake against Real Madrid. Like people are worried about that because of a track record.
Yeah. So Um, it's hard, man. Like
I mean, I think it's like
one of the top 10 managers, like in terms of tactics. How do I measure this?
well, I can tell you that not only is it impossible to do that, but it's even I think even more unnecessary in 2023 because a top three tactical manager, if you asked 3 months ago, was Julian Nagelsmann. Julius Nagelsmann sitting at home right now. Is he? So are you telling me one of the top three to top five, like most tactically astute managers in world football doesn't have a job because they couldn't
Hmm.
get results, right? And the same thing with
Right,
Tuchel.
because
Tuchel had
Bayern,
this
like
reputation.
Barcelona, is just a different
Yeah,
beast.
I mean, same thing.
Yeah.
Again, Tuchel was sitting at home for a while, got the Bayern Munich job, and they're like, so if he had won the same games that he lost, people would say Tuchel, of course he's top three, Champions League winner, has all these great ideas, but because he lost those same games with Bayern Munich, then it doesn't put him on the list. So yeah, I mean, it's the same with like even the Napoli manager right now. If you moved Luciano Spalletti from Napoli somewhere else with a different team where the players profile differently, is he the same manager? Does he have the same success? And if he doesn't have success, is he still a top five, top 10 tactically astute manager? What I think Xavi is that I will give him credit for, though, why I would say that like you can have this conversation with him in it is because I would consider him at a high profile club, which I think is I unfortunately I think we see it as a prerequisite of being a top manager. He's at a big club, if you will, so his results and his decisions are amplified and put on blast 100 times over. But I think what makes him tactically astute that I would say is that when he makes mistakes, I can question and say, is that like why would he do that? Like, and you think about it, and it's not just some kind of random thing. It's that you kind of always have an idea of what Xavi was trying to do, whether or not it works. And so I think what Xavi does have is concrete ideas. And I think what people want from their managers a lot of the time to consider them tactically astute is a manager that comes in and says, okay, this is the style of play I want to institute. These are the kind of players that I'm comfortable with. And I want my ideas to be represented on the field. And it's not just about the vibes. It's not just about the results because that's why people would never say Sam Daishore, who just got the job again, the big guy, not Steve Bruce, the other one, Big
Uh,
Sam. Yeah, yeah, Sam
yeah,
Allardyce.
Allardyce.
So right, so it's
Yeah.
like, would anyone ever call Big Sam technically a astute manager? No, no, but he's good at going into those locker rooms and saying, "Hey, y'all want to be eating, grits for the next year in the championship? No, go out there, smack some guys around, kick the ball in the net, and let's win some games." And so that's what he does, and that's not, I
I
think,
I heard that lately he's been going into dressing rooms telling his players that he knows as much about football as Pep Guardiola. Something I heard.
he's got to say that. But so like, and I know like the Amazon Prime video, I mean, documentary series and other things like open it up and say, well, Xavi's doing these things emotionally to motivate players, and all top managers do that. Pep Guardiola is tactically astute, but he's also an emotional lunatic who pushes players to their emotional breaking points over and over and over again, right? And that's why some of them just don't make it. And I think Xavi is like that. So that would be my argument for why Xavi is like a top 10 guy. Because I just think he has practical ideas that make sense. You understand what he's tactically trying to do, and he's trying to put it all together to get proper results.
One thing that I like about Pep Guardiola is he surrounds himself with very intelligent
Mm-hmm.
assistant coaches. The assistant coaches that he's had over the years are very impressive, from Juan Malillo to Estuarte to Tito Villanova to um, Arteta. Like he's had some very bright
Mm-hmm.
assistants. And one thing that has always worried me about Xavi is that he has his big brother as his assistant. Then again, apparently it's his big brother who organizes and coaches the defense, and that's the only part that where we're not suffering. So maybe
Yeah.
Xavi should be Oscar Hernandez's assistant and not the other way around. Who knows?
Yep. Yep.
But,
Yeah.
um, I think another thing that is really good about Xavi is just the amount of credit that he has at the club, the amount of respect that he has from the whole entorno, um, and the way that he handles that pressure. Always positive towards players. So this is a huge plus because this club can eat you alive.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it happen
Yeah, I mean,
so
if reports
often.
are to believe, it just happened with the sporting director last week. It just happened with the sporting director. So, all right. Well, hopefully, again, you and I have been around the block with Barcelona for a while, so it has yet to eat us alive, which is a positive, and I think that's a place to leave it. So, Levon, thank you again. If your listener question was not answered, I will most likely have these bleed over to the second show this week, unless there's big news that we have to talk about. But I'll answer those questions later on. A lot of Barca athletic stuff, a lot of youth stuff that I'll be answering there. So anyway, follow him on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at the Barcelona Pod. He's at Barcelona down in the show notes below. Patreon, Facebook group, close Facebook group. And I actually want to mention Patreons real quick. There were some new Patreons in the last few weeks. I really appreciate you. As I kind of made mention to, things always fluctuate when it comes to YouTube revenue, when it comes to podcast revenue. Different things change based on listener base or whatever. And that Patreon stuff, to know that is guaranteed, by and large every month, helps me to know how much I can dedicate to doing the shows, how much time it takes to do these shows, and all those different X's and O's as far as when I budget and things like that. So, to the new patrons, thank you so much again for being a part of that. And again, I always appreciate everybody doing that and helping me out on the back end. And again, that also gives me the potential and ability to put in more time to try to create more revenue in places like YouTube and the like. Which I do have some things cooking. People ask for the history stuff, and I've got two things cooking because with Barca TV, who knows if those archives will be around? So I've been intently watching all those Barca TV documentaries and things like that, taking all my notes, and I'm going to repackage all that stuff for history of the club stuff. So that is what you can look forward to in the next few weeks as the season winds down and comes to an end. But first, Barca have a Liga trophy to win. So thanks so much for listening to the show. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Forza Barca.
Forza Barca.